President Biden said just moments ago the White House is considering additional sanctions on Russia after the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny while he was imprisoned in Russia. Let's get straight to CNN's MJ Lee, who was there listening to these comments. Do we have any idea of when this decision was made and when these sanctions might be put into place?
Yeah, Sarah, the president just returned to the White House after over the weekend saying repeatedly that he believes Vladimir Putin is directly to blame for Alexei Navalny's death and that this is just one more sign of the Putin regime's brutality. The news of his death, of course, as you know, has really brightened the spotlight on Congress as additional U.S. funding for Ukraine remains stalled. And a question that I just asked the president is whether he would draw that connection between Congress's inaction and Navalny's death. And this is a part of his response to me just now.
Mr. President, would you go as far as to say that Alexei Navalny's blood is on the hands of House Republicans right now?
I wouldn't use that term. They're making a big mistake not responding. Look, the way they're walking away from the threat of Russia, the way they're walking away from NATO, the way they're walking away from meeting our obligations, is just shocking. I've been for a while. I've never seen anything like this.
How do you think steps will make any difference in nudging House Republicans to pick up Ukraine aid? They're on vacation right now.
I hope so, but I'm not sure anything's going to change.
I know my second question was a little bit challenging to hear, but I was asking him whether he thinks Navalny's death will do anything to nudge House Republicans to take action. He obviously didn't sound very optimistic. He also told another reporter that the U.S. is considering additional sanctions on Russia, but no additional details were given by the president when he was speaking to reporters. Over the weekend, the president also talked about this critical Ukrainian town that fell, and administration officials have been warning for months and months that if U.S. funding runs out, that there are going to be detrimental effects on the battlefield for Ukrainian forces, running out of ammunition, running out of important equipment. And that is what Ukraine is saying is happening already. And the president over the weekend did say that he was concerned that additional towns could end up falling if Congress doesn't take prompt action. But of course, the political reality that he is grappling with right now, as we just heard him talk about, is that there is a small faction of House Republicans that is not willing to take up this national security supplemental bill that does have some $60 billion in additional aid for Ukraine. Sarah?
MJ Lee asking the important questions there and getting some good answers. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Fred?
All right, Sarah, just moments ago, we learned that Alexei Navalny's body will not be returned to his family for another 14 days. That according to a Navalny spokesperson. But Alexei Navalny's widow is now vowing to pick up his fight to bring change to Russia. Yulia Navalnaya met with several EU foreign ministers this morning, and before those meetings, she posted a new video online promising to find out how her husband was killed.
In a cowardly way, they're hiding his body, not showing to his mother, not giving to his mother. They're lying and they're waiting for the traces of another of Putin's Novichok to disappear.
CNN senior international correspondent Frederick Pleiken joining us now. Fred, the Kremlin has said that an investigation is underway. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, they said this investigation is underway and that this investigation is open-ended, that it's unclear what exactly the results of this investigation are going to be, which it appears to mean that if you take into account the spokesperson of Navalny's comments that apparently the body for at least the next 14 days is going to be under some sort of investigation. There might be some sort of autopsy or other tests that are going to happen. Obviously, as we've heard there from Yulia Navalnaya herself, she does not believe in any of that. She does not believe that the Russian authorities are telling the truth. She was referring there to Novichok apparently wearing off. That, of course, is a reference to the chemical nerve agent that not only Navalny's organization, but also internationally, a lot of countries said that Alexei Navalny was poisoned with earlier, a couple of years ago, where then he ended up in treatment where I am right now in Berlin. Of course, at this point in time, it's very difficult or impossible to say what exactly happened to Alexei Navalny, but what we can see there from his widow, from Yulia Navalnaya, is that she does not believe anything that the Russian authorities are saying. And certainly what we've been seeing over the weekend is Alexei Navalny's mother trying to get some sort of access, first of all, to the morgue where they thought that the body was, and then also to the forensics lab where they believe that some of these tests are being done, so far to no avail. all of this happening in the way north of Russia, above the Arctic Circle, just to give an impression of how difficult it is for Alexei Navalny's organization and also for his family to get any sort of access. These are, of course, extremely remote parts of Russia where even communication can be quite difficult from those areas. So we heard there from Alexei Navalny's widow that they want to find out what exactly happened. But I think one of the other things, Frederica, that you also said is also very telling and very important, and that is the fact that she is already meeting with EU leaders, with EU foreign ministers, trying to continue his work, which is what she has vowed to do, guys.
All right, Fred Pleitgen, thank you so much. Kate.
Joining me now to talk much more about this is Julia Ioffe, founding partner, Washington correspondent for Puck. Julia, it's good to see you. You were there at the Munich conference when the news came out and Alexei's wife, Yulia, made that remarkable appearance just after learning that her husband was dead. What do you make of what we're now hearing today from Yulia? She believes that Alexei was poisoned once again. Do you think the world will get a clear answer?
I don't think the world will get a clear answer. In fact, Alexei Navalny spoke about this in an interview after he had made a long way on his recovery from the first time he was poisoned with Novichok. And the interviewer asked him, you know, if you die, if something happens to you, will we ever get an answer? Will we know what killed you? And he actually said, you know, this is what will happen if I die. The Kremlin is going to say was, you know, he died of some kind of cardiac failure. Everybody else is going to say this is very suspicious. They'll have rallies for me with people holding photographs and posters of my face on them, but we will never know what killed me. It will always be known as a suspicious death. He seemed to foretell it because frankly, he knew the system so well, and I think he's right.
The family being blocked from accessing his body. Putin spokesperson telling journalists this morning in a call, we are not involved in this matter, and that means in returning his body. This is not the responsibility of the presidential administration, and now we're learning just in the last few minutes that they've said, the Kremlin has said they will not be releasing his body for 14 days. There's always a mind game element when it comes to a lot of what Vladimir Putin says, at least. And I'm starting to wonder if there's a mind game element to this.
I think it's a pretty simple mind game. I can give your viewers the key to it right now. Basically, whatever the Kremlin says, be it Dmitry Peskov, Putin's spokesperson, Putin, or any representative of the Kremlin, all the way down to the prison authorities of the prison where Alexei Navalny was killed. Whatever they say, it's the opposite of the truth. That's it. So the other thing I would say is that when they say the body won't be released for another 14 days, it doesn't mean that the body will be released in 14 days, nor does it mean it will be released in any kind of state in which the family can use it to conduct an independent investigation. I would not be surprised if, you know, after a month or two, the relatives get a box of what is said to be Navalny's ashes, and whether they are or not, we won't know. But I think what's clearly happening is the state is trying to cover up what happened, trying to hide all evidence of this, and make sure that we never know what happened. In fact, we saw this when Navalny was poisoned with Novichok in August of 2020. He investigated this himself with his team of investigators, as well as with Christo Grozev. It was on the CNN documentary Navalny. When he called the FSB agent, who was one of the people responsible for poisoning him, he explained what they did to cover up what they did. So I'm sure that that's exactly what's happening right now.